Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. My guest today is Omar Shaya. He is the founder of Multion. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. What is Multion?
Multion is an AI agent that can do things for you. And it does so today by using the web like a person. So it's like having, an assistant or just a person doing things for you on the web instead of you having to do it yourself.
So what is the world going to look like when we no longer have to use the web anymore? What's that going to look like?
Well, you might still want to use the web for things that you really want to do. Let's say you like to write, and you might open a Google Doc and write in it. But the things that you want to delegate, then finally you can delegate them without having to hire an expensive executive assistant. Instead, you can delegate them to our agent, and it will do it for you. Whether you want to make a restaurant reservation for dinner, or even book a flight to travel somewhere, all of that will be covered for you, so you don't have to worry about it anymore.
And can I already do that? Can I already, if I go use Multion, what are the things that I can already do?
It can do all that. So the way we trained our model, it's a general purpose model. So it's capable of reasoning on any web application and figuring out how to do it. So it's not that, oh, today it's trained on booking hotels, tomorrow it's trained on booking flights. No, it's actually trained on reasoning on the web and working on the web. And so out of the box, it's capable of horizontally doing so many tasks. The way we evolve the model over time is that the complexity of the task itself gets more and more, let's say the tasks or the steps it can do within a specific task get longer and longer. So let me give you an example. So for example, if you used to ask it to order one book from Amazon, now, in our V2, you can ask it to order 10 books from Amazon in one go. Or if you used to ask it to schedule a meeting on your calendar, now it can schedule multiple meetings on your calendar, or it can check your calendar appointments and then take some actions based on this appointment, maybe order an Uber for you for your next appointment, all in one go. And so the complexity of the tasks are getting more sophisticated as we evolve our model, but it's out of the box kind of a horizontal model that can do many things.
It's so interesting. And is this in beta now? Is this something that I can go, is something I can go sign up to, or are you only giving limited access?
Yeah, it is available now. We're still considered it's in beta, and I can definitely give you access, but we're still limiting access just to make sure we have all the guardrails in place that we need to have. But it's already being used by thousands of people.
Great. Okay, so I'll definitely want to use this afterwards. So it's just, we could talk about the philosophy behind it, because I recently interviewed somebody who gave me a great framework, which is the copilot versus the autopilot framework, i.e., we're going to have agents that are copilot that we're talking with that help us do the thing we're doing, and that's already inside of Copilot. And I don't mean to make it specific to that brand, and then we've got autopilot. And autopilot seems like what you're working on, which is like, go do this thing. Like, I don't care how it gets done, and then go do it. But it seems to me like, I guess a lot of reservations, a lot of people who would have with this is that, I'll give an example, very practical for me, which is I just went and I messaged 4 people on an Airbnb to go meet in person, because I hate getting to an Airbnb and not liking the place, and you can never tell from the pictures. So I went and I got them. We met at the coffee shop and we checked out the apartments. And so if I were to just go and say, hey, agent, go get me 4 Airbnbs, it would be even worse, right? Because I would end up in a situation where instead of me kind of getting the vibe through the pictures, this agent gets the vibe through the pictures. And I imagine that vibe will, like, the agent will be able to do better vibe checking than me in the future. But right now I'm skeptical. What would you say to that? Like, is it where is it just a matter of explaining to the bot the exact specifications, or is there something else going on right now?
Yeah, it's this categorization is tricky, because even when it's a copilot, where do you draw the line? I mean, it's still doing some things completely on its own for you that you ask it to do, right? And so I'm not sure like it's the best categorization between copilot and autopilot. I think you want something that gives you control. So when you want it to do everything for you, it can do it. Or when you want it to check with you before it makes a final decision, it should also be able to do that. And so this is more for us about the way you ask the agent to do this for you. It's like you could exactly ask it to find for Airbnbs and message the hosts to meet. And we actually saw someone doing that. So we interview our users, ask them, how are you doing it? So we saw someone doing this, but not for Airbnb, but for Facebook Marketplace. And like, oh, he's selling something on Marketplace, and he's like, hey, check with the people who offered me more than $200 and ask them to meet on specific dates or to call a phone number. And so you have control over how you want this agent to behave on your behalf.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, and so now the window of opportunity is becoming much more clearer. I was before doing this interview, before doing the previous interview, I mentioned I was somewhat skeptical of AIs, of autopilot AIs, of autonomous. Actually, this is a great question to ask you. What is autonomy, and how, what are the, because we all know ChatGPT now, we all know that what it means to interact with an artificial intelligence, but it can't really act on its own. And so acting on its own, what, like, and you can feel free to go as technically as possible you want here. Like, what separates autonomy and an agent from being autonomous versus what we have now with this chat AI interface?
Yeah. I consider myself a bit more pragmatic, so I'm not very philosophical, I have to admit. And so, I mean, I like to think high level about things and big picture, but to me, you know, the kind of what I would call the more pragmatic approach is, you know, we already have a lot of these products that mostly focus on generating text.
Yes.
Right. Or a product like ours, which is focused on taking actions. So we don't, you know, we're not focused on generating text, and we use a third-party LLM to generate text, so you can just have a conversational interface with it. But our focus is on models that take action, and that's where the difference is. So I don't see it as autonomy or non-autonomy. I think both in a way are autonomous. You ask them, you give them a prompt or a task, and they respond to you. But the difference is one is generating text or generating an image, and the other is translating your prompt into actions and taking actions.
Yeah, I love that. I love that reframe of autonomy. Instead of autonomy being this sort of agent that's out there doing its own things, there's like, what are the things that it's actually doing? And so in that categorization of what are the things that it's already doing, what for your product or in terms of other agents, like, what are the realistic things that we can do right now? What are the things that are overhyped? And what are the things that like are totally just impossible?
Nothing is impossible eventually. But we focus on consumers. We focus on, let's call them high frequency tasks, tasks that you would do several times a day, several times a month. And they are mostly kind of personal in nature. So we're not focused on maybe some very specific vertical scenarios, like whatever, like law, legal scenarios, or accounting scenarios. We're focused more on if you would go and hire an executive assistant.
Yeah.
Kind of that's the same experience you would get. And this is something that, you know, already exists in the world in the form of human executive assistants. And that's part of the inspiration where our product can do many of the things that they can do for you. And it can do even more in certain areas, and it can do less in other areas. Like it cannot take a phone call for you yet, but it can definitely access any software you use, and you maybe are more comfortable allowing it to access any software you use on the web than allowing some other person doing it. So
that's an interesting point. I love that point of essentially like, because some things you can trust the robots less than you can trust other humans. Some things you can trust them more than other humans. And I guess it comes down to trust of you and your platform as well for a lot of consumers as well. But it's such an interesting point, because I would trust giving a robot my credit card more than I would trust giving a human being my credit card. And so that's a really interesting idea. I imagine that you guys are probably going to eventually get to the point where you could actually have the thing answer a phone call. I just saw on Twitter somebody posted a video of another software that they did, which is creates a deep fake video like what we're doing right now, a deep fake video of a job application, and it was quite convincing. And so I imagine that it'll get there at some point as well for this EA type of thing. How much does it cost?
So today for the version that's available, it's $19 a month subscription. And this is subject to change because we're still in this beta phase. So we have a special kind of model there, but eventually these things might change, and you know, we would like it to be in the hands of as many people as possible. So we'll see how things evolve in the future, but today it's $19 a month.
Great. So like technically, and you know, it doesn't matter to me if you can't answer this. There's like, how did you guys train your own foundational model on this, on task writing? And like, how is that different from foundational models of like training for the LLMs? Like what is this a whole other different thing, or is this more similar to like just training a large language model?
Yeah, we would like, you know, I think that's an area which is tricky, like what you want to share, what you don't want to share. But you know, on a high level, we are not training the same scale models as OpenAI, let's say. Like that's not what we're doing. We're benefiting from some existing LLMs that were already pre-trained, and then you know, we have our secret sauce that we also train, but it's, you know, many people are using the term action models.
That's interesting.
So I don't know whether that's a thing now, but some people like to call it that. I would say what's different about us is that we have a systems approach. So we have a whole system of many components working together to make this happen, versus like a single monolithic kind of model that is doing everything. And so
that's cool.
I would leave it at that. And then
monolithic model. So yeah, systems versus monolithic. That's really interesting. Okay. Man, this is so interesting. Do you think about the future often, and like where are we headed in a world where software? Because the way I see it is we've got Mark Andreessen said software is eating the world. He said that like 10 years ago. Software has now eaten the world. And I heard an interesting quote yesterday that now Mark Andreessen is eating Washington, D.C., which I thought was really funny. Like he's going in and getting involved in the politics and such. And so software is eating the world. Now AI feels like it's eating software. And so the way I see it is that we're entering a world where hard tech, deep tech, these like really fundamental technologies are going to become more attractive for both people wanting to preserve their capital, investors, and also those who are looking for employment, because the job market might change radically. And so like going into things that are still much harder to do. And for my listeners, maybe for you, I don't know if you're interested in deep tech and hard tech, but those are essentially like, satellites in space beaming down energy, space manufacturing, like material science, all sorts of really kind of difficult things that are still difficult because software seems like it's going away. Do you think that software isn't going away? AI is eating software. So in order to interact with this abstract world that software represents, you're just going to use AI. And there's not going to be as much business opportunity. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with it? Do you have any nuance on that? What do you think about that?
I think I'll go back to my approach to things, which is, as I said, I'm much more pragmatic, and so much more focused on like the concrete outcomes. And to me, AI is software. So software is eating the world wasn't, I think it's a nice headline. And I think it means that, software is being deployed everywhere in every sector, every field. And AI is some sort of software. And so this, to me, at least pragmatically, it sounds like if AI is eating software, it means that software is eating itself in a way. So I think AI is just a form of software that is more similar to humans in a way, or the way we do things in many aspects. But AI has been always there, and it's been software. You still write some code to make it happen with some special approaches. And in terms of the future, I'm also a believer of we create the future that we want to live in. And so we wanted to see a future where everybody has access to this AI agent that can do things for you, so you can focus on the things that you want to spend time on and not have to worry about the things that you still have to do are important, but maybe you don't enjoy doing, and so you can delegate them. And so this is the future that we wanted to see and live in, and so that's why we decided to go and build it. And similarly, I hope everyone else who's building is building things because they want to live in that kind of future that is hopefully much better than the present, and just improving things over constantly.
And are you technical yourself? I imagine you are. I get the sense that you are a coder. And are you using AI within your coding practice? Are you still doing a lot of the coding yourself, or are you starting to move away from that? What's your relationship with programming?
Yeah, I am technical. I started coding when I was 10 years old, and I have two computer science degrees. Like I did my undergrad and master's in computer science. So yeah, I did my fair share, and definitely AI has revolutionized programming. Like it is like so good at helping you write code faster, and especially helping you also focus on the aspects that you can be really creative about and like architect a system
Mm,
and
mm.
have the AI fill in the blanks and help you, like, you know, the kind of the more kind of mundane or boring stuff, you have AI help you write that code. And so we're definitely leveraging AI in our code, and everyone on our team is using AI on a daily basis for that.
And so, okay, so I've got a lot of questions, a lot of follow-up questions, because I started to code about in 2015, and I hated it. It was so horrible. And because I ran into this problem, which is that, there's this very abstract thing that I have to learn, and I'm just on my own in a random country with nobody around me who's also learning it. And every time I would get blocked, I would be like, oh man, I got to go search Stack Overflow for some random answer and then post, and then it wouldn't, nobody would, like, if it wasn't there, I'd have to ask somebody. And I had programmer friends and such, and I probably, if I were smarter about it, I probably could have asked them and stuff. But it was just like, I run into a problem and I have no hope of a solution unless somebody much better than me comes and fixes it. And so this was just like really boring. And then as soon as the Chat 3.5 came out and it started, I tested it to see whether it could help program, and it could do some stuff, but it got a lot of things wrong. It couldn't actually do a lot of things. And then ChatGPT 4.0 came out, and I was like, oh man, this is finally the thing. And so now I've finally gotten the inspiration to get back on it, and it's crazy how quickly it's going. So I got a lot of follow-up questions about this. Have you ever used AI to refactor your code? And for my listeners, refactoring essentially means that you have, the code that you've written, and then you grow the application and you want to connect that code with other things. And so you change it and you move it around and you make it smaller, you make it more efficient. Have you ever used it to fully refactor your code?
Not, I wouldn't say fully refactor. No, it's really good at filling in the blanks. Like you need a block of code, a snippet. These are, you ask it specifically, like you ask it to either change an existing code to do something different, or just write a new block of code to do something that you want. But I think it's still maybe not exactly there where it can fully architect something or refactor like a larger code base.
Is
You
the only
also you also don't want to lose track of what's happening when it's changing things.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so the more you let it change, the harder it becomes to track the changes and what happened.
That's really interesting because when you're dealing with a code base, it's very large, and somebody explained it the first time I tried, was that you're kind of doing a mind meld with the application, and in order to mind meld with the application, each time that you start programming again, you have to like spend like some time getting into it again. And so what you're saying is so complex, so abstract that if you get AI to write a bunch of things and you don't know exactly what all of those things were, then you're lost, basically, right?
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right.
Cool. Okay. So refactoring, there's not that much advantage, but you get
Yet.
right yet. Okay, interesting. And what's the preventer there? Is it the context window? Is it only the context window, or is it the model itself?
It's both. It's both. I think the also some aspects of maybe explainability and awareness of your
Mm.
full application or software versus just the single file you're looking at. And So it's definitely gonna get there. And maybe it is there already, but maybe we're not trusting it enough.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's just a matter of time. I think AI and programming are like one of the fastest moving
Yeah.
areas.
So
AI.
crazy.
And it was probably the first like major application of the GPT models, right? With the GitHub
Oh,
Copilot. That was probably the first like major GPT application that made a big difference. It was a clear jump in like the capabilities that were possible with that.
that's an interesting point. Do you think that that was GPT-2 or GPT-3 that connection started to become between coding and the GPTs?
I'm not sure. I think it was around the GPT-3 time.
Yeah.
So, but it's not clear to me internally whether that was 3, 3.5. I think there is this model called Codex or something. So
Mm,
I'm not so sure what was the underlying model then.
mm.
But
Okay.
it's around the same time as publicly GPT-3 was out there.
Uh-huh. So there's been this great debate the last few months about, Jensen Huang saying coding is going away. Don't learn to code. Do you think it's going away, or what do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think what he meant is AI will be able to do most of it. And so uh, it depends. Like when we say going away, maybe the need to learn how to code at the level we do today maybe is not going to be needed anymore because AI can do a lot of it. And if you look at the history of programming,
Mm,
it's always evolved to get closer to like a human language level.
yes.
So it used to be, zero ones, and then you have this kind of ASCII uh, or like this kind of other machine language, which is like a bunch of letters and registers and things like that that you would exactly tell the machine what to do, like take this field from the memory, multiply it by this other field from the memory. So that was very, very, very very low level. And then we started having these like newer programming languages where C, C++, and then Python, which has a lot of English in them, while and for and if and then so we've always been trying to get programming languages to be closer and closer to English, to human language, and most now it's gonna be maybe just pure English with these advances in AI. So
Yeah, yeah.
now probably nobody can program with zero and ones, but
Yeah,
many more
interesting.
people, at some point you had to kind of know how to do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And part of me wants to go back into the history of computer programming and kind of ask a lot of questions in that sense. Then you said something interesting about memory, and I want to understand what's the importance of memory within programming, particularly modern programming. Like how, because I keep on hearing that programmers like the more a programmer wants to advance, the more they go down to that bottom layer of the abstraction chain in order to understand what's going on there, so that they can make their apps better perform. Um, but then it comes up to this like natural language question, and so I guess English, English or any other language is now, or is going to be very soon, essentially a programming language. Oh man, and that gets into interesting territory because language itself is a sort of programming thing. It's like the language you use, as you mentioned, we create the future, and that future is like really dependent on how we use language, and you can kind of cast spells on yourself by saying things in a certain way, either for the good or for the bad. Um, and Man, okay. In a world where a programmer is speaking English with the AI, and the AI is going and doing the code, then that metaphor that you said of essentially like a lot of the coding will go away. So a lot of programmers will lose the ability to program unless they go back and figure it out. But then when problems arise, I guess the AI will be able to figure it out as well. Do you know where I'm headed with this? Like, it's like, like in this new world, I guess the deeper question is like, what should I be learning now? Sorry, I got another question there. So that, like, some people want to learn programming because they want to get jobs because it's a well-paying job, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that specific thing might be this thing that AI takes, as in programming itself, unless you can do some sort of programming. Like I'm running into a barrier here because I don't have the language to explain what I'm really getting after. But like, do you see where I'm going with this? Like, what, anything that I said kind of spark anything that you want to talk about?
I think the essential question you're trying to understand is whether people should learn programming or not.
Yeah, and I guess no. The reason why I'm learning how to program, although making money is great and being employed is great, is not necessarily what I'm doing. I want to be able to create the things that I want to create. And so now we're in this world where it might take 3 years, it might take 5 years, it might take 7 years. At some point, the actual coding languages might change significantly. So like, what should I be learning right now in order to prepare for this future? Not for the sense of getting jobs, but more for the sense of like creating stuff.
It always helps to understand how the underlying systems work. And so when we study computer science, we go to all the way down to like the metal, the machine layer, and understand what's happening from the zeros and ones to even more to like the transistor level. Because when you understand what's happening, even if you're just using like natural language, you'll have a better idea of
all the variables,
what's causing certain things to happen, or especially when it comes to optimizing a system, making it more efficient, making it faster. And so I don't think that learning the classical programming as we know it today will be obsolete anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think understanding what's going on will still be important. Also remember that, imagine how much software has been built already using these traditional languages. And so many of these systems will still be there and maybe just evolve over time. And AI maybe will help you understand them, but at least having an idea of what's going on will be helpful. And maybe there will be a point where, yeah, programming as we know it today will be completely obsolete. But I think it's a transition.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not sure whether it's gonna happen like instantly, like next year. So if you want to get into building and creating, probably it helps to learn some foundational concepts in programming, and then, or just hire people to help you do it.
Yeah. That's the other part. And well, even if you hire people, I think what you said actually makes sense, which is that the more you learn the concepts, the more you're able to understand the variables, and you won't need to understand how to program the variables in this abstract programming language, but you still need to understand the variables to define what you want. And so I think that's going to be the key. It already is. It always has been, as long as we've hired other people, because we also need to communicate with other people about the things that we're working on. But I really like that. So the answer is basically, I'm going to start to learn the concepts. So, okay, here's a great question for you. In your computer science, you started when you were 10 years old. What are the concepts that most programmers most consumers don't understand, but that have really helped you in building technology?
Concepts that consumers don't understand?
Yeah, in computer science, what are the concepts that consumers are just like oblivious to because they're interacting with this software. It's really easy for them to use. But you as a programmer, you know what it takes to actually like create something. And like there's a lot of things that you know about that world, and that a lot of consumers don't. I'm a consumer who is entering the world of building stuff. I built other things before, so it's not like I'm complete newbie, but like, what are the big gotchas that I'm going to have as I'm learning these concepts? Or what's the most interesting concept that you've learned in computer science? Like, let's go back to the memory. How does memory work inside of a computer?
Yeah, the main memory we talk about is the runtime memory. So when the program is actually being used, that's the memory that's very close to the processor, and that's supposed to be super fast. So when you open a software or an app, it's loaded to the memory, and then you're making changes in this memory. And so this is kind of the main concept of memory. And so it used to be that memory management was important. It's still important, but now because memory can be much larger and much faster, it can handle much more. But when memory was very limited, you had to always understand how to empty memory and only use it for the essential things that you need. And then you have the other layer, which is like, let's call it the storage, where you're actually storing the application. And so that's like it used, in the old days, they used to call it the hard disk, right? Where it's much larger, you have everything there, but when you actually use something, it's loaded, or parts of it are loaded to the memory, which is used to also be called RAM, random access memory, which is like the fast memory that's really close to the processor, or sometimes it's part of the processor. And so that's the fast memory. And so I think these details of the architecture of how software works, maybe not everyone's aware of them. I mean, it's hard to tell what consumers know or do not know.
Yes. So okay, so runtime, it's really interesting. What do you code in React? Do you code in React, or is that a software that you use?
I don't. I rarely use React myself. I think we have excellent people who do our front end and kind of product engineering, and so I tend to look more at the algorithm layer, or algorithm part of like, okay, how the system is working in terms of architecture, or in terms of the algorithms that are actually doing the things. So in my experience in the past, I spent time at Meta working on recommendations and ranking. I spent time at Microsoft working on also like an AI assistant experience. And so I was more thinking about the models and the algorithms, and less so about React or the other. I mean, I was involved in the design of things in terms of the user experience, but less so in the React code itself, or whatever product engineering we were looking at. But it's so important, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have the best algorithm in the world. If you don't have a great experience, it could be useless.
Yes. Okay, and that actually gave me a lot of further points as well. The algorithms. What are the main blockers what were the hardest things for you to learn in your experience learning how to deploy algorithms? Like, what kind of thinking is helpful to code algorithms?
It's a tricky term again, because everything is an algorithm in code, like, because everything is, you're describing a bunch of steps to achieve a goal, and these could be simple, fewer steps, or it could be really complex with like so many steps. And so it's living with these concepts and thinking about, I mean, combination of understanding how systems work and understanding your objectives and what you want to achieve. And then in a way, you're kind of translating the final outcome you want to see into a computer language or steps that you want the machine to follow to do what you want it to do. And so I think this idea of translating from an experience to an algorithm is the skill that you want to be good at.
Yeah, and that's reflected by a friend of mine, Adam Haney, a former colleague as well at Invisible Technologies. What he said is really interesting, which is I was asking questions about bugs. So like, what are the main bugs that people run into? And he said semantic bugs, syntax bugs, and one other type of bug. I can't remember. But then he followed up and he said, but the real bugs that come out are sort of policy bugs. It's like when you don't understand the problem, the business problem or the life problem that you're trying to solve in that translation thing that you're talking about. When you don't understand that problem, that's where the real problematic bugs come, because that's when the user comes in, the consumer just has no idea what's going on in the background, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't do what that person wants to do. So I think that's a really good point, that it's essentially like, how do you understand problem solving, and problem solving, deep philosophical territory, but I think very pragmatic as well in this sense, which is that like that's the human beings. Human beings are good at solving problems because we have so many of them, and so like we've become really good at problem solving. And now we have this other thing that's coming in, which is the AI, and that's going to solve a lot of our problems. But I think we'll still have a lot of problems to solve. So I don't think problems are going away. But it really figures out, it's the core thing that we need to learn is how to turn a problem, understand the problem, and then turn it into a solution. Anything I said that you agree or disagree with? Anything you want to expand on?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. So we got about 10 more minutes left. What was it like being 10 years old? How did you come to find programming? Like, what did you like about programming when you were that young? Like, how did it evolve that you got so in love with the machine, or got so in love with the process?
So I grew up in an artistic family, and so the idea of creating things was with me since I was born. It's like, if you see something, you understand that, oh, it's created by someone else. Anything you look at, whether it's the chairs we're sitting in, the tables we're eating at, and much more beyond that. And so that was always my mindset. And so when I liked something, the first thing I wanted to learn is how to do it or how to build it. And that's why when I started getting into computers and like being fascinated by how much you can do with them, the natural next question to me was, okay, how is this thing created or built? And that's what led me to programming. And so it was kind of my pattern to just learn these things. And so that's how I started. I bought a programming book and then started using the software and started doing it. And that's how it started.
And what was the first book at that time? Did the internet exist? Could you go on the internet and find answers, or was that before that?
You could. It wasn't obviously as good as it is today or in the last few years, but you could. Yeah, I was really into books when I was a kid. I mean, still, but so books was my default approach to learning things. And so I think the first book was Visual Basic, and then it was C++. These were the two languages I started with.
That's very cool. So You love books. How are you, do you learn, so leaving programming aside, are you learning from the AI? Do you treat it like a tutor? Is it replacing your search? And the reason why I ask this is because I've been thinking a lot about books. For myself, I love books as well. But now I'm noticing that I'm much more attracted when I have a question to go to AI and start to learn it in this like tutor sort of sense. Are you using it in a similar way? And like, is it changing the way that you consume or the way that you interact with information, the way that you learn?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. And I remember, you know, I moved to the US a few years ago. And so some of the US focused sports like baseball or football, I wasn't fully aware of how they are supposed to function. And so I would use AI to ask questions. It's like, and then ask follow-up questions. And that was much more enjoyable than, yeah, searching like some Wikipedia article, because you could ask specific questions about the rules of baseball or football or any of that. And so that's just one example. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, learning new things, especially like faster things. Uh, what I mean by that is like things that are maybe do not require a whole book. You can learn like the main ideas about them and then just pick it up. AI is definitely much better. So like the era of like 10 blue links is probably over by now. It's just a matter of time now. I think our expectation is to get the answer. Good to have the source, because sometimes we want to go to the source to double check. But yeah, definitely this last wave of AI. I mean, AI has been always part of search, and I worked on search myself as well when I was at Microsoft. But AI is definitely the new wave of AI has significantly revolutionized that category.
So what was obviated or what was made redundant about this wave of AI compared to the last wave of AI? What, in terms of search specifically, like, I guess the better question is, how did search use AI since the beginning? Was it since Google started the peer review? Is the peer review ranking from Google, like that they started in 2001 or whatever, is that AI?
I'm not sure what is this peer review thing, but
Back.
search always search has always required some sort of ranking, and ranking was like a very traditional AI or machine learning problem.
Got it.
The big difference today is that it used to be that you would develop specialized like a special like ranking model, special something else model. Now the new models, because they're super large, they are capable of doing many things at once. So they can summarize, they can even rank and figure out, okay, what is more relevant information. You still have, specifically in search, you still have a mix of the older methods and the new methods, because the web is so large. So you need to kind of first get some level of, maybe get like 5, 6 sources, and maybe you get them through traditional approaches, and then you summarize them and you get the final result with the new approach, which is like the large language model. And so this is a mix of both, especially when you want to ground your answer with sources.
That's a really interesting point, and it makes me think that the internet, because I've interviewed guests before talking about AI, and one of them specifically said it's like a lossily compressed search engine. And I've now forgotten what that lossily compressed means, but I get the sense that it's just like, instead of searching the whole internet, it downloaded the internet onto a large language model, and then you're pinging the entire internet every time you do it. And so it makes me think about like, what does the internet look in an AI enabled world? Because you have, if it's just gonna like the internet itself was already a network of networks, and now we're going to get a network of networks of LLMs, or the LLM, as you said, will kind of like be that layer that you interact with. It's almost like the front end to the legacy internet. And so there's definitely a lot of interesting areas we could go into it. But I think that's the time for today. Really appreciate you taking the time. How can people who are listening find out more about Multion?
Yeah, we are at multion.ai, our website, multion_AI on Twitter. And these are the best two sources to follow our updates and news.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.